So, welcome back. This is your host, Steve from the back. I just thought I'd rant on this because this isn't a rant about anything hardcore or anything that's that serious. This is just a kind of a funny rant on some things I encountered. I know I spoke about this before. When I was homeless at one point, and I'm not really going to go too much into the backstory of how I ended up being homeless or whatever. Maybe I will at some point or something um, of how this thing happened. But I wanted to speak on something. This is something that's gross, that's really gross, that I'm sure most of us agree on. We don't like. No one likes roaches, right? Like, I know some people have roaches as pets. Like, they have bigger roaches as pets, like hissing cockroaches and stuff, or whatever. Um, but I'm pretty sure no one likes living in close proximity to roaches, and especially not um small roaches where they're in just a large amount all at once, kind of like ants. But there's just roaches everywhere in certain places, and the funny thing was, usually, and I'll even go into the fact of how I even started coming up with nicknames for these types of roaches, or aspects of these roaches' lives. Like, I started coming up with nicknames for them, which are kind of funny, because I'm sure you would never, you would never hear something like this, or you never think that a person would be connecting this to a roach. So one of the funny things was when I was out because I was homeless, but I was living by an area where it was a train. They were train tracks. So these train tracks basically sit in the middle of. You have a highway with a fence that separates it, and then you have I forgot what type of complex or whatever it is. You have a store in between that. You actually have a line of stores, almost like a plaza. Like they just go in a line, in a straight line, and then you have the open part of the city on the other side of that. So basically, you have the backside of stores and things, and then you literally have you have what used to be a trolley station, but it's abandoned and boarded up now. It was open. It was abandoned, but still open when I was living in there at some points. I was living between there and the train tracks. So you got to understand, you have areas where there's just bushes and overgrowth and stuff, and you have a surprising amount of trash that people just dump, throw out, every disgusting thing you can imagine. It stinks, and this, for me, it was in the summer too. So wherever roaches go in the winter, I don't know. They probably burrow somewhere or something. I don't even know. I don't know a lot about them. So maybe they hibernate. I don't know. But there are different types of roaches. Obviously, there's a bunch of different types of species, and there was a few different types that I would see out there. Some were just so weird that I didn't know what to make of it at the time. I didn't know what to really even make of it. It was like, you would see these, but the one I'm talking about, in mostly in common, it wasn't your generic house inside roach. It wasn't the roach you usually see when you're inside. Not, and hopefully, I don't have them inside of my room. In my complex, I know some people have them, and I've seen them occasionally. But there was this type that literally, it's this roach you see outside, and it's small like the ones that are inside, but the thing is, it flies. It generally flies sometimes, I would dare say, more than you see it crawling sometimes. You see it flying as a mode of like, what do you call it? Like, transportation. And it's not a graceful, flight either. It's kind of like a one shot glide. Like they'll get to one point and they'll literally. Now the scary weird thing about these things is they can spring too. That's another thing I don't understand. Like they jump. Like, you know how crickets jump. Like, you go to touch a cricket and it bounces. You go to touch it again, it just bounces again, and it just keeps jumping and springing around. For some reason, they have the ability to do that. I don't know why they have the ability to do that, but these roaches do. They can just hop. They just hop, or they can hop around. They crawl sometimes, but they can also hop, and they can fly too. Like, whenever they want. It's literally whenever they want to fly. They can just, like a beetle. You ever seen it's kind of like a even more primitive way than that a beetle flies. So, the roach will get to a leaf or a branch or whatever, or you'll be in your little stupid abandoned building and all of a sudden you see this thing just gliding across the room, and you see this flutter. You just see this gliding in a straight line across the room, and you already know what that is. You know it's one of those stupid roaches. You're like, oh, here it goes. They're just flying in through the window, looking for food or traveling or whatever the hell they're doing. And what I started calling these roaches was Jolly Ranchers for some reason. I don't know why I came up with this name. That's just the name that I came up with them, is calling them fucking Jolly Ranchers. And calling the I've never seen an egg casing from one of these roaches, but if I were to see one, in my mind I would just joke around and either call it a shell casing or a shell. You know what I mean? But I've actually never seen a pregnant, nor have I seen a roach casing from one of these type of roaches. Or if it was pregnant, I would joke around and just call it a loaded roach, But they're disgusting. They're disgusting. But something I noticed, again, something weird about these roaches. I mean, when I say weird, I mean really weird. Is these roaches? I'm not saying that they're transparent. I'm not saying that you can literally like see through them. But I'm saying they have a transparent nature to them, to where you don't see that in like your general German cockroach that's in your house. It's more, a German cockroach is more of a like very hard-bodied, dark. I hate to say it because it sounds gross. A more of a juicy, hard roach that seems tougher. Just like it's weird because you think outdoor, you'd think tougher. But no, the roaches like that, German cockroaches that are in people's houses, generally are like tougher roaches. These roaches outside are kind of, I'll use the analogy of like how, if you ever seen someone pull like a very flaky croissant apart, or you've seen someone take crust apart and it's literally a flaky type of crust, where it's literally like, it almost seems like there's nothing in there, it's just air and flakes. These roaches, if you hit them with like the slightest, pressure, like when you want to really kill a roach, when you squish these things, they literally fall apart like as if they are made of feathers and flakes. Like with, I hate to say it, but half of the time, very little juice in these things. Like, I don't know why that is, but that's just how they seem to me. When I would kill them, it would be like flakes. They literally just fall apart like a flake. Like they're made out of like nothing. I don't know. I don't know if they're actually denser than, but to me it seemed like there's no way that thing could be denser, because number one, it flies when I say fly, I mean it extensively flies a lot. These things, and these little roach. One time, I was just like astonished because I was in the grass, and it's funny, I actually literally almost got hit by a motorcycle because I was in the grass laying down, and it was like, I would dare say it was probably going on about almost 90 degrees of heat outside. And it wouldn't matter if you were outside. If you didn't find shade, you will just bake. You will just bake. It'll be horrible. It's overwhelming. Literally, you'll be out there, and even though you're outside and homeless, you'll be down to like, you'll be pretty much in your boxers at some points, ducking mosquitoes, and you'll be trying to be in the dark. Like if there's a dark spot where there's like a lot of shade, you'll literally be on the ground, and you'll be trying to stay as far in the shade with as little minimal clothes on as possible, and you'll try to just sit there, and you're sweating profusely. And the sucky thing about that is a lot of times you get attacked by mosquitoes, because you're so exposed and you're just outside, because you're obviously, like I said, you're homeless. You're like, what are you gonna do? And I was laying down and I heard this noise from far off, and I realized it was a motorcycle. So what I did was I stayed there, and I realized I only have to move like inches really to not get hit by this thing. So I literally just stayed where I was, and then just moved. When it came near me, I just moved enough, not to get hit. And I think the person that was on the motorcycle was kind of like startled, because they're thinking, oh man, there's a person there, I could have just hit this. Like, what the hell is this? But when you're homeless, that's kind of how it is. You're just like, one time I was sleeping out there and I was homeless, and I still was working at this time, and still finding ways to like clean my body and stuff, and have resources and stuff like that, because I wasn't paying rent because I was homeless. So I was spending the money I was getting from work, from food and resources, and then saving some. So there was a point where I was sleeping literally with a blanket over myself, and two guys that were homeless too, I believe, they literally started to step on me at one point. It was kind of comical. Like, I felt their feet. I felt their feet step on me, and they didn't step that hard because they clearly really quickly noticed a person was under there. And then they apologized when I didn't jump up to my feet, but I just kind of turned over really fast because I really didn't know what was going on. It's kind of like I was woken up by being stepped on. So, shit like that can happen when you're homeless. It sounds crazy, but it can happen. So anyway, one time I was in the grass, and I was laying down, and I happened to spot one of these roaches, and I noticed that this roach barely crawled. It was like a cricket. It literally would just spring itself to one point to another. Like it would spring, and then it would stop, and then it would turn, it would spring, and it would spring again. So I started just seeing if I could even catch the damn thing. So it's like I would try to grab it, and the thing would literally just spring to one point, spring to another, like it was a goddamn cricket. And I was like, wow. I said, that was the point where I actually came up with joking around and calling them Jolly Ranchers as a joke. And the first thing I thought of was, for some reason I thought of Lord of the Rings. I was like, this is a fucking Legolas ass roach. This is the elf. This is Legolas. This is the sprite, the little elf, whatever you want to call him, that is hopping around and jumping around like he just lives in the woods. He's just so agile. He's literally like he's just jumping around everywhere. Like he's a frog. Like he's a cricket. It's just I'm like, how's a roach doing this? Because I used to remember, and this is also a thing that like boggled my mind. And I understand it now, but I did not understand it when I first saw it, and it actually freaked me out a little bit. When I used to live in this one apartment years ago, there was roaches in this apartment, and it wasn't to me. It was just that the roaches were already there, and I happened to found out later. And the thing was, like, at night mostly. You would see them more at night, and the thing was, you would literally see like a roach on the floor, and you would notice it would go from crawling really fast, but then it would almost, I swear to God, I can only describe this as, you ever played the game Devil May Cry and they do like a flat, what they call a flash step? You know, a character like does like a flash step, like they literally almost not teleport, but they accelerate with such a pace that it looks like, it almost looks supernatural. You're like, nah, you're like, this is, what is this? What's going on here? This is freaky. Like what is this? I realize it's because roaches sometimes use their wings. They can't really fly, some roaches, but what they do is they can literally, it's almost like they put on these like afterburners. Like they literally can just zoom a little bit across the floor because they put they flap their wings so fast that it propels them forward like at this extreme rate. You know, and not in a long line, but a short, like short burst in a short line. And especially because the lights were off and it was dark and I'm seeing this, it looked so it looked so freaky. It looked extremely freaky if you could understand how I was seeing it, you know. And I would be like, I'll admit, at that point, I was like really Christian, and I didn't know what to make of it, and I was like, this is cursed. In my head, I'm thinking, like, am I cursed or something? I'm like, is this a natural thing? Doesn't look natural. Like, what's going on? They're literally crawling. They look like little shadows crawling across the floor, and then all of a sudden they go, and I'm like, whoa, what was that? Like, it looks like off of the movie, Ninja Assassin, when they made it like the ninjas had powers almost, and they just start shadow like flash stepping themselves across surfaces. Like what's going on? Like is this a horror movie or is this fucking roaches? Like what the fuck is this? But I realized I looked on YouTube and I did my research. And I'm like, okay, your roaches can propel themselves sometimes across the floor using their wings as kind of like an emergency, I don't know, like some type of panic, or they like really want to do something really fast to get across an area. They start doing that periodically. But yeah, these little roaches outdoors were fucking hopping. I was like, they were literally hopping around. Some of them, they just didn't even feel like, they didn't crawl. They didn't want to crawl. They just decided they're just gonna spring everywhere, you know, and crawl sometimes. So it's pretty crazy, man. But one thing about me is I really do not like roaches, and by no means do I want to live around them. They're disgusting. They go everywhere. I just can't stand the damn things. But I just thought I'd rant on that because to me it was very funny. It was funny, but it was also very eye-opening. And there's another thing I want to talk about too. There's about two different other types that I saw out there that were just really weird, and I really don't really understand them. I don't really understand what they are. Now, I can't say if they were an adolescent stage of a certain type or if this is what they actually are. But these roaches were hard-bodied roaches. Now, when I say hard-bodied, I mean they don't have wings at all. I mean they literally have hard ridges, almost like, not scaly, but they have segmented, sharp, almost like bony looking ridges for a body more than anything. You know, it's almost like how you see on a some of these hissing cockroaches, how you notice they don't have wings and they're very darkly colored, like almost like a black or a deep brown, and then they have literally a bunch of segments for the rest of their body in their what do you call it, the top part of their body, which I think is the thorax, I think, and then like the abdomen or whatever is just the segmented, a bunch of slits, like it's a bunch of segmented lines. It just looks really rugged and really like hard. I've seen some of those out there too, and they just crawl. I don't think they spring. They seem very, not slow, but you know, because all roaches are kind of fast, but I mean, they seem slower and just, I don't know what they are. I don't know. I rarely saw them. I've only seen them once in a blue moon. And then there was another type that was just like a very dark roach that clearly had wings. I noticed the antennas on it were longer than most of them, and it would literally just fly. And when I say fly, it had much more of a graceful, kind of reminded me of a moth more, like, because moths aren't that graceful, but you know, moth is a little bit, in my opinion, more graceful than like some beetles sometimes. And they were thin too. They weren't really like super thick roaches. They had this more of a thin type of body, and they would literally just, when I say fly, I mean this shit is like, it's startling. It's startling when you see it, because it's scary, because you're thinking like, well, fuck, the thing is just so, it's just so mobile. Like it's like, you don't know if it's gonna erratic. You don't know if it's gonna fly on your face. You don't know. You just see it, and it's kind of off-putting because it's like this dark. They're very darkly colored too. So like you see this dark shape, and it just darts across the area that you're at, and you're like, ugh, like fuck this. I want to get out of here. Like, this is disgusting. What the fuck, you know? When I first saw one of these, it was inside of a lamp. It was literally inside of the shade of a lamp, and someone had abandoned this lamp. And I see this thing, because I'm very observant, so I see the smallest things. I see big things, but I notice my sight tends to key on to very small things. You know, if I see a small movement, sometimes my eyes tend, like a cat, you know, my eyes tend to just dart over in that direction, and I start trying to understand what's going on, you know. So I saw something move in the shade of a lamp, and it was a roach. I noticed it was crawling around at first, and then not only was it was crawling around, but then when it got to the top of the lamp, it just shot out and flew off. You know, and it landed somewhere, and then it just flew off again. And that was the first time I saw one of those. You know, and I said to myself, like, I gotta get the fuck out of here. I was like, I know I'm trying to get out of here, but I really gotta get the fuck up out of here, man. Cause this is a shock to me. Like, I never thought I'd be laying on the floor outside with these type of things. I never thought I'd look up in a tree, and on the tops of the leaves, just like you see beetles sometimes or ants, you literally see numerous roaches just crawling on top of the leaves, like as if they're, you know, of those other type of bugs you see doing that shit. And I just didn't like it. I honestly hated it. I fucking hated it. You know, but that was my experience, man. So next time you see a roach, you know, you think think of it as a Jolly Rancher, you know. Mr. Jolly Rancher, Mrs. Jolly Rancher, in the fucking kids with casings, loaded roaches. Just think of it like that. The roach family. You know, fuck. So, this is your host, Steve from the back. Like, comment, and sub, and have a nice day.